I think Tyrese Haliburton is a lock pretty much for the All-Star game this year. Yo, what is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of NBA Now. It's your boy Dom, and we're gonna get right into things here today. So, today, we're gonna kind of take a look back at the Tyrese Haliburton trade from the Sacramento Kings to the Indiana Pacers, while also looking into the future for both teams and kind of seeing what these teams can do this year. I think both teams provide a very interesting future headed into the season. And yeah, I think it's one of the coolest trades to look back on. When you look at the fact that you saw Domantas Sabonis, one of the best playmaking bigs in the league, get moved to the Kings, but then them still end up being a not great team and ending up with a high pick in which they were fortunate enough to go out and get Keegan Murray, who from what we've seen in Summer League, I loved him at Iowa. I actually had Iowa going pretty far in the tournament due to him, and so we'll see kind of what they can do there. But they were able to bring him in, who I think will fit well alongside some of the guys that they've got there in De'Aaron Fox, in Domantas Sabonis. But on the flip side, then you've got the Indiana Pacers, who were a bad team as well, selecting Benedict Mathurin in the draft high as well. But they were able to acquire Tyrese Haliburton, who once he kind of stepped foot in Indiana and kind of was given the reins to a NBA organization, he showed that he's that guy. Right, Tyrese Haliburton showed up, showed out, played amazing, averaged like all NBA numbers once he got there, like 20-something and 10. Playmaking was there. His defense has been there the whole time he's been in the league. Whether you like or dislike his shot, he's a good shooter, and he does a lot as just an individual player, which is super cool to just conceptualize when you're looking at NBA teams and lineups and kind of just matchups and everything like that. And then obviously on the court, he's just, like I said, a phenomenal player. I have talked more in depth about when this kind of trade initially went down, and a little bit there shortly after in a different video. So if you guys haven't seen that, make sure you guys go check that out. Huge appreciation on all the support on the channel recently. We did just hit 100 subscribers, so thank you guys for that, and we're gonna just keep it moving. But yeah, when you look at the Sacramento Kings side of things, heading into this season following that trade, it's super interesting, right? I think a lot of people expect De'Aaron Fox to kind of bounce back after having a lackluster last season. I think we expect him to kind of get back on track with, being one of those guys that's an up-and-coming young guard that we expect to make an all-star team and kind of lead his team and stuff. And man, did the Sacramento Kings just find a way to... They at least give their fans hope. I know... when you look at teams kind of prior to the season, you're trying to spot that team that's going to make the playoffs. The Kings, for the past 2 or 3 years, they seem to always be that team. Obviously, they haven't made it in like 20 years, but they are a very good team. You know what I mean? At least they have some very good pieces, right? And they've had a lot of very good players come through there, including Boogie, De'Aaron Fox, and others. And still not made the playoffs. So I don't know. It's kind of interesting how they manage to kind of rope you in every year. But this team, it looks good. It looks good on paper. We'll see how they play on the court with De'Aaron Fox, with Domantas Sabonis. Harrison Barnes and Keegan Murray are kind of interesting to me. I think at some point throughout the season we'll see them both starting if they don't start initially together. This is interesting though, because in like the modern day they are both more a power forward. To me, so obviously we're in more of a positionless basketball day and age, but offensively I like both of them more at the 4. Defensively, it doesn't really matter, they can play the 3 or the 4. I think either better with interior defense on both. They have that base that can kind of hold them up against some bigger guys, and then be able to go on the other side of the floor and kind of stretch out the floor and kind of make some stuff happen that way. So I could be interested to see if Harrison Barnes is finally traded from the Sacramento Kings, a guy that's been rumored to be traded from there since pretty much the day that he was in the middle of a Mavericks game and got traded there. I mean, he's been in trade rumors the entire stint of his career in Sacramento. So we'll see if that finally happens this season. It would make a lot of sense with the addition of Keegan Murray, like I said. But yeah, they did fill some holes that I think were very, very needed on this roster. By bringing in shooters. They brought in Kevin Huerter from the Atlanta Hawks for if I can remember it right, pennies on the dollar. And so we'll see what he can do. He did average fairly decent assist numbers next to Trae Young, who was one of the most ball dominant guards in all of basketball. Like 3 or 4 assists next to him. So, maybe they decide to bring him off the bench for a little bit more playmaking when some of their top guys are out. Maybe they decide to have him in the starting lineup next to De'Aaron Fox, just to help with the spacing and stuff. Obviously, De'Aaron Fox being a downhill guy, and stuff like that. And then, one of your better guys being a big man, it doesn't hurt to have shooters out there, especially when you know the playmaking of Sabonis, who, if he gets it to him in the high post or even in a low post situation, if a double comes or however the motion of the defense kind of rattles, he should be able to be one of the better guys to find an open shooter. So that's definitely something to consider. Malik Monk also last year was a very, very good shooter. One of the few bright spots on that Lakers team last season, which provided us a good fair amount of memes last season, so we can't get too mad at that, right? But yeah, no, both of these guys shot like well above league average from 3 on a plethora of attempts. If we look at what Malik Monk did just this last season, he shot about 39% on 5.8 3-pointers per game. Before that, he shot over 40% his last year in Charlotte on 5 3-pointers per game as well. So you see that consistency there the last couple years. Obviously, he had a shaky start coming into the NBA. But, since then, the last couple of years, he's been a knockdown guy from 3. And so definitely will be very beneficial to them. When we look at Kevin Huerter, this last season, we also saw him shoot 38%, 38.9%, which is his technical career high, only barely eclipsing his rookie year of 38.5, but he hasn't shot lower than 36% in his entire career. Last season shooting 5.6 3-pointers per game, so the exact same as the year before, but increasing his percentage pretty significantly from 36 to 38, at least when you kind of break it down. Yes, it's only 2%, but moving that much higher away from the average 3-point shooter in the NBA, especially on that many attempts, is definitely good to see as he enters his 5th year in the league. Both of them averaged like 12-13 points per game last year, so I could see a world where both of them are starting. Defensively, that's awful. Actually, a lot of this team defensively is awful, but we'll get to that here in a minute. But offensively, super, super interesting, and they provide some dynamic stuff for this offense. I think I like Kevin Huerter off the bench a little bit more due to a big guy off the bench in Davion Mitchell. Davion Mitchell got the name Off Night last season after being a very impressive rookie, and Off Night for the fact that whoever he was guarding was supposed to have an off night. He played phenomenal defense this last season. And so him kind of getting into his 2nd season, we'll see what he can kind of do there. Not the most explosive scorer. He's only like 6'1", 6'2". And so I do like the idea of having Kevin Huerter off the bench as well to kind of help with some spacing and then some size in the backcourt, even if Kevin Huerter isn't a phenomenal defender. Having some size that, switchability and stuff like that. Especially next to a good defender in Davion Mitchell, who, regardless of his height, he's able to, kind of do his thing. But there is a point where, your hustle and, your defensive IQ does run out. You know what I mean? If a 6'1" guy gets matched onto a 6'10" guy, that 6'10" guy, like Apollo Banchero or something like that, can just go to work and do what he wants. You know what I mean? And there's only so much that little guy can do. So... And that's no hate. I'm smaller than that, so I'm below 6 foot. So shout out to the short kings. You know what I mean? But yeah, I think having Kevin Huerter off the bench, again, some more playmaking, some stuff there. So I'd be interested to see that. If we do see Keegan Murray potentially coming off the bench as well, at least to start the season, that could be interesting, and provide this bench with a lot of scoring potential. But just even between those 3 guys, along with Richaun Holmes, who is kind of that low-end starting caliber center. Like, if he starts for you, it's not the worst thing. But him off the bench as kind of a spark plug guy should be good for them as well. I expect them to start Sabonis at center. They definitely, I guess, could start him at the 4 like he did in Indiana, but I think we saw kind of how that eventually flamed out. But yeah, this team should be super interesting offensively. Defensively, again, there is some struggles to kind of look at there. Now there is the bright spots in like a Davion Mitchell. I think there's definitely potential with Keegan Murray to be a very good defender. And I guess they'll kind of have to wait and see how things kind of turn out. We did see, I'm going to pronounce his name wrong, Nemanias Keita in the Summer League. I definitely butchered that. I don't know. I haven't been able to say his name since he entered the league a few years ago, which I feel bad about. But yeah, he did pretty well in the Summer League, so maybe we see him get some more action. He was able to shoot it, play some defense, so who knows, maybe he gets a little bit more run. We see more of two big lineups with Sabonis at the 4, since they've got a couple bigs that could potentially do something there. So we'll kind of see how that works out. But yeah, the Kings roster is extremely interesting offensively. I think defensively they're lacking, like we've said, but who knows? There's always trades. There's always the deadline, and they did get a new coach. So, sometimes just implementing a system and prioritizing the defensive side of the ball and hustling on the defense can get you to a league average defense, which I think if this team can get to 15th or 16th defensively in the league, it'll be a playoff team, just because the offensive power that some of these guys provide, the spacing, the modern offense, and some of the dynamicness of a couple of these guys on this roster, especially De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis, would prove to be very potent, especially in a regular season setting. So they intrigue me a lot. But to head to, I guess maybe the more interesting, deep kind of thinking process, guy to look at, team to look at potentially, is the Indiana Pacers, right? Obviously the Kings have a lot going on in their own right. I think they might have made a trade when they traded Tyrese Haliburton they're going to regret for a long time. Obviously bringing in Sabonis didn't show fruit last year to get them to the playoffs or anything like that. In fact, it still led them to the same direction that they were headed with Tyrese Haliburton, which was right to the top of the lottery, and right to the top of the NBA draft. But he is something that they didn't have, which was like that big man that they can truly rely on. Like I said, they had the Rashawn Holmes and everything like that, but missing Tyrese Haliburton is going to be a big thing for this team this next year, and it's going to be a big addition for the Indiana Pacers. Obviously, we saw what he could do last year with them, but like I said, I can't big this guy up enough for what I think he can do, having his own team finally. 6'5", 6'6" guard, plays defense, he can shoot, he can play make like one of the best in the league, he can score the ball. And they brought in some stuff that I think is going to make this team very interesting. So obviously having Buddy Hield next to him worked out very well last season. Buddy Hield being the shooter that he is, one of the best shooters in the league when he is on. And then Miles Turner is kind of a perfect big to fit alongside Tyrese Haliburton. Obviously we did see some trade stuff potentially come up with Miles Turner, but we haven't. Those same rumors have been flying around for a few years, and I think it looks like Indiana chose him, at least for the next couple years. We'll see what kind of happens as the future goes, since I do have some other big guys on this team that do show promise. I think you look at a guy like Goga Bitadze, a guy drafted a few years ago at this point. He hasn't really quite shown exactly what he could be. He's shown some flashes, but hasn't quite capitalized on that. Isaiah Jackson, again, being another guy, kind of a 4, kind of a 5, a little bit more of a still work in progress, but definitely a guy that's shown some flashes as well. And I think one of the biggest intrigues when you look at this front court is Jalen Smith. He was a guy that was drafted top 10 to the Phoenix Suns, fizzled out there as it was looked at as an awful pick when he ended up getting to Indiana, which I don't even remember how he got to Indiana, whether it was a cut, it was a trade, it was, I don't know. But one day I remember I was on 2K and he was on Indiana. I was like, oh, that's not a bad backup big for them. And I think he showed that, right? He's able to stretch the floor, play the 4, play the 5. And I think he's starting to really kind of show some of that potential that got him that top 10 draft position. So he's a very, very intriguing guy to keep an eye on for Indiana this next season. And he could be the guy that pushes Miles Turner out of Indiana once and for all after all these years of trade rumors. But he can kind of do it all as a big man shoot. Dribbling and all that self-shot creation isn't really there. But when it comes to being a pick and roll guy, a pick and pop guy, kind of a guy that just can help space the floor when other guys are doing their things in different actions and stuff like that. on offense. He's a guy that can do well, so I expect him to have a good season. He's kind of, I guess what I would say is my Precious Achiuwa of the year. If you guys didn't see last year, I was big on Precious Achiuwa. He did kind of get to some of that stuff that I was hoping that he would last year at the end of the season. But I think Jalen Smith can have a very similar impact for this team and be good on both sides of the ball as well as stretch the floor. So I like him being on this team. Some other pickups that they had, well, obviously having Chris Duarte, one of the older rookies last season, but a guy that showed quite a bit, and so I think he'll just continue to be solid for this team. I think, him and Buddy Hield can both shoot the ball. They fit super well next to Haliburton. He can play some defense. Not like the best defender in the world, but he can play some defense. He's about 6'6", right? You throw him at the 2, the 3, especially having Haliburton, the bigger guard. It allows for switchability with this team, which is good. Some other kind of nuggets on this team that, they aren't gonna break the box office or anything like that if this was a movie, but Oshai Brissett, sorry, I just butchered his name the first time I said that for some reason. He's a pretty solid player. He shows to be a good bench player and just a good rotation role player. Daniel Tice, we know what he is. He was acquired in the trade with Boston, in which they pretty much gave Malcolm Brogdon away for free, which is kind of ridiculous on Indiana's part, but they have enough pieces that it shouldn't really affect them too much. And then, so Daniel Tice as a, role player, spot minute big, isn't bad for them as well. And then TJ McConnell, obviously a staple, the embodiment of what the Indiana Pacers are when you think of the Indiana Pacers, because it's Indiana, is TJ McConnell, right? Your local 1950s plumber playing in today's NBA and playing pretty solid. He can pass the ball, he can score the ball a little bit, and he runs the bench unit very well. He has been doing that for quite a while in Indiana. Some small nuggets on this team that are good players. When you look at what they acquired more in the offseason, you look at Benedict Mathurin in the draft, who we mentioned earlier, and then you look at Aaron Naismith, a guy that was drafted to the Celtics to be one of the best shooters potentially in the league. Obviously, he has not done that so far. When you look at his shooting splits so far in the league, it isn't what you want. For a career, I'm trying to see, what does he shoot career-wise? So, in his 2 seasons in the league, his career three-point percentage is 31%. Last season, he only shot 27%. His rookie year, he shot 37% on 2 3-pointers a game. Hasn't upped his amount taken since entering the league. He took 2 3-pointers per game both years, and then his 3-point percentage just declined. So he's a guy that, if he can kind of get it together, could be really, really big for this team. Kind of like how you can never have enough shooters in the modern basketball, and especially in the modern NBA. But kind of like how we were talking about Malik Monk and Kevin Huerter for the Kings, if Naismith can kind of get to something like that, which is what he was projected to be entering the league, that could be huge for this team. It could be huge for this team. Because it allows some trade flexibility with, Duarte or even Naismith or Buddy Hield, where you kind of have one a little bit too much, and because shooters are so valuable in the league, it allows you to potentially speed up your rebuild that you're in. But also when you look at bringing in Benedict Mathurin as a top pick in the draft, he projects to be potentially the best shooter on this team. He was a 40% shooter his rookie year. Or not his rookie year, his freshman year at Arizona. I think that dipped a little bit as his attempts skyrocketed and his points per game skyrocketed in his sophomore season. But I saw a video on him a couple days ago. I can't remember who it was by. If I can find it, I'll link it in the description. But it was a great breakdown on him. And he projects to be very, very good. He, I think, could be a sleeper for Rookie of the Year, due to he's going to have some potential. He can easily start on this team, 6'6", 6'7" guy. He can play defense. He can shoot. They've got a lot of switchability with some of these guys. If I'm the Indiana Pacers, I would love to be fielding offers for Buddy Hield at this point. Buddy Hield is a little bit out of the timeline of this rebuild, and him and Miles Turner have been rumored to be traded for a Russell Westbrook. I think that would be a terrible move by the Pacers, as you might get a couple future picks 10 years down the line, but at that point you're hoping to have already been good, making the playoffs, trying to compete, you know what I mean? And I guess, yeah, that's future assets. You can always flip them again. But I would love to see Buddy Hield and Miles Turner get turned into, I don't even know what, but both of them are valuable pieces in the league. And I think are going to catch more than they're probably worth in the trade market. But yeah, I think both those guys definitely could be a very, very good trade package to get you some stuff that can speed up the rebuild that they have going on and make some of these older guys, these veterans that are good with this team, that have shown promise with this team, stick around and still be there after the rebuild, like a guy like a TJ McConnell, right? So we talked about how Buddy Hield might be a little old for the rebuild. Well, he's the same age as TJ McConnell, but TJ McConnell is such an Indiana Pacer guy, or even a guy like a Chris Duarte, such an Indiana Pacer guy, that, like, you want these guys that, yeah, Duarte was an older rookie. McConnell's been there for a few years. But McConnell, you know, as you kind of try and have this rebuild pretty quickly, because I think that's how good Tyrese Haliburton can be, and especially, you know, Benedict Mathurin, he can definitely be an all-star in this league. You know, he can, if his shot creation goes up like it projects to be, he's going to be just a better, more efficient, younger, faster, stronger Chris Middleton. From all things that I've seen so far. I didn't watch him a ton in college, so, you know, I've tried to kind of catch up on my after the draft scouting, as most NBA fans do. But he's a guy I really, really like coming into the season, and this Indiana Pacers roster I really like coming into the season. But yeah, I definitely think Turner and Buddy Hield could be on the trade block some more this year, and we'll see what kind of happens there, whether they're traded or not. I think the Indiana Pacers have a shot to make the playoffs this season. I think that's how good this rebuild can quickly turn around, and I think they have a lot of assets on here. They invested smartly in stocks, pretty much. Like, if they went to Wall Street, they bought all the stocks that project to potentially just boom, right? They didn't spend a lot to get, well, they did spend a lot to get Aaron Naismith, but, like, Naismith isn't a guy that they're, like, too worried about if he doesn't go crazy, right? But if he's able to kind of capitalize on his potential of shooting, boom, that's huge, right? Buddy Hield and Miles Turner are already there. They're solid pieces. They are gonna fetch more than they're probably worth in the trade market. Daniel Tice is a good spot minute center. If you do end up trading Miles Turner, well, you still have some other bigs on your team that can kind of fill in some of those spots. And then guys like Chris Duarte, Isaiah Jackson, guys that you picked up along the way, that show stuff that is going to work well with this team. A guy like Jalen Smith, who, like I said, I don't even remember what they gave up to get a top 10 player, but that's how low his value was at the point when they got him. And now it's, you know, he projects to be a very, very good player in this league. So the Indiana Pacers have been making a lot of good moves, and I don't love the Malcolm Brogdon move, but for the most part, they've been making a lot of good moves to set themselves up for success this year and headed into the future. And I'm interested. I think Tyrese Haliburton is a lock pretty much for the All-Star game this year. I think he's going to be too good on this team, and he's going to push this team. You know, I've talked a lot in the last couple videos about, you know, the Magic trying to make the playing game and Detroit trying to make the playing game. But if either of those teams are going to make the playing game, they got to be better than the Indiana Pacers, because the Indiana Pacers have some players and have some guys that are already established, which I think is huge. Whereas you see the Magic and the Pistons establishing themselves, well, this team is already established with a lot of their players, and they're going to be a fun team. They are going to be a fun team. I think Indiana Pacers fans should be excited for what Haliburton and the crew are going to bring to Indiana. And, yeah, I think Benedict Mathurin could definitely put himself in conversations for Rookie of the Year. So let me know what you guys think of the Kings and Pacers future this year and kind of heading into the future. And which team do you think is going to be better this year? Obviously, last year with the trade of Sabonis and, you know, Tyrese Haliburton, it was looked at that the Pacers were going full rebuild and the Kings were going all out for the playoffs. Both of them ended up very close in the draft. Next to each other, and in my opinion, the Pacers have a better team right now than the Kings do. So I think it's going to be one of the biggest regrets for the Kings, trade wise, headed into the future, and one of the biggest steals even for the Indiana Pacers when we look back on this in 2 to 3 years and we're like, wow, they got Tyrese Haliburton for Sabonis. That was phenomenal GMing job. You know what I mean? But yeah, let me know what you guys think down below. Obviously, like I said, I appreciate all the support on the recent videos. Drop a like and subscribe for more, and I will catch you all next time. It's been your boy Dom. Peace out, guys.